Hello and welcome to a semi-final edition of Off the Ruck, your weekly rugby breakdown with me, John Ferguson. It has been a stellar first week of qualifying finals that happened last week. Now we're into the semi-finals with the Crusaders hosting the Blues and obviously the Chiefs hosting the Brumbies. It's been a controversial point all week, but nonetheless, we have to enjoy the games of footy that we've been plated up here, because both the games are going to be absolutely stellar. First one obviously taking place on Friday evening, which is going to be the Blues and the Crusaders. We're going to go through that first. Then we're going to head straight into the Chiefs hosting the Brumbies. And then finally, we're going to do a little bit of a video analysis on the Brumbies and the Chiefs the last time that they met. What's different? What's the same? What are going to be the small margins that are going to matter the most in the game that is coming up on Saturday, which will decide the second finalist? Can it be the Brumbies who ultimately break a hoodoo of the finals series run in Super Rugby Pacific? And is it the Blues that can potentially, upset the Crusaders that have a phenomenal track record at home? All that, we're going to get straight into it right now. Starting off in Christchurch with the Crusaders hosting the Blues, it's really good to see that this final's being played between two sides where their rosters are looking relatively healthy compared to how they looked perhaps throughout the season. The Blues lost a lot of players early and they've had to weather the storm with those injuries. Likewise, the Crusaders have had a little bit of late season niggles. They're finally back. So the likes of David Havili is back in the centres. That's really great to see. Unfortunately, they're without Tamaiti Williams, and that will impact the way that the scrum comes out. We'll touch on that in just a second. But apart from that, both teams are looking pretty healthy. Now, I think that people have a misconception that sometimes these two teams play very different styles. But in fact, based on what we saw in last week qualifying finals, they are going to be playing exactly the same almost. It's going to be mirror rugby. Both teams have the back three to be deadly and to be absolutely devastating, but in what it's going to be very cold and likely dewy and wet conditions, it is going to be more about who rules the roost at the center of the field, who can really dominate the breakdown. And I'm not talking about who can actually pilfer the most ball, because both of them have breakdown threats like a Blackadder like we saw last weekend against the Queensland Reds, and we know that the Blues have the likes of Dalton Papali'i, who's more of a defensive number 7, but also who can really get into that breakdown. But nonetheless, it's going to be about who can really boss that contact area and then who's going to be able to push past. They both kind of flirt with danger when they kind of take resisting players out in those three-man pods when they're coming at them in defense, so that slows the attack down. It's going to be really interesting to see how Dolman referees that area of the game, because he tends to kind of let it most things go, and that's not a good thing or a bad thing. That's just the kind of referee that he is. So it'll be really interesting to see which side takes the initiative to be able to use that to its fullest advantage. Likewise, as I said, both sides play very similar rugby, and so if there are any loose kicks that are not necessarily contestable, or they're going to be kicked deep, and you give the likes of a Zahn Sullivan, who's back for the Blues, congratulations on coming back from injury once again, such a talented individual, unfortunately just had a very injury-riddled career so far, and he's young at his young age. He's going to be going up against incumbent All Blacks fullback / winger Will Jordan, and if you give either of these players an opportunity to run the ball with no pressure, especially from around their own 40-meter line and then further close towards the opposition try line, they are going to take that every day of the week, because they are such dangerous runners of the ball. And the Crusaders have Shea Fiaki and Sevu Reece on the wings, as well as the Blues have Mark Talia and Caleb Clark, All Blacks pairing on the wings. It's absolutely lethal combinations for both sides, but they will be able to take it to the 15, and then both sides are the highest teams in Super Rugby Pacific that attack the blind side. So both sides will look to hammer that, and as I explained last week in the video analysis, it is about attacking a blind side to be able to overcommit players, to then have your attack fully set out on the other side, on the open side. So let's just say you're in the 15, you attack at the 10 meter, and then you hammer down that channel. You've got the whole width of the field to set your attack, and you have time whilst also marching upfield, provided you get that gain line ball. But both packs have the likes. The Crusaders have Anton Chalfoun, the incumbent All Blacks captain Scott Barrett. They have Fletcher Newell, Cody Taylor, absolute powerhouses, along with Christian Leowelli at number 8, who really supply that gain line ball. And then that is going to be able to get them over the gain line, and then they'll be able to spread it out to the backs. And likewise, for the Blues, they've got Hoskins Satutu, they've got Patrick Tuipulotu, and they have Adrian Chote, who's an extremely hard worker. And so they have those kind of players that can truck it up in those 15-meter channels to be able to give their team a front foot ball to then go on and to be able to attack out wide. But due to the wet conditions, it's going to be really one close to the ruck. And I think that a lot of teams have shown that there are frailties around that ruck defense, regardless whether you're running a rush defense or a connected line speed defense. So it would be really interesting to see which side actually managed to expose that in the wet. But nonetheless, I do think that both sides are going to be looking to test each other and feel each other out at the set piece. This is an area I think that the experienced Crusaders front row have an advantage, particularly at scrum time. No Tamati Williams, as I mentioned, succumbed to injury last week. It's really unfortunate because they had such a powerhouse scrum going against the Reds, and they really folded them on several occasions, and it got them out of trouble and allowed them to apply pressure in other situations. Fletcher Newell and George Bower, Cody Taylor, All Blacks front row going up against an extremely impressive Blues front row in Renata Fusitua, and also I believe it is Riccitelli starting. That is a good front row that has serviced extremely well, particularly Fusitua in the absence of Ofatunga Fasi, who is injured currently. But nonetheless, I think this is going to be another area for the Crusaders to truly be able to go to work and win some relieving penalties when they have it in their own half in wet conditions, and then also be able to apply the blowtorch if they get a scrum within 5 or 10 meters to the Blues line. Then I think vice versa, I think the Blues line out is an extremely, extremely impressive weapon for them because they have the likes of Patrick Tuipulotu, who is such an immense presence at that maul. And it's going to be really interesting because both sides are going to be trying to play really direct and going to try to build some phases, but nonetheless, due to the wet conditions, they are going to have to kick smart, and that may actually favor the Blues because they have that immaculate playmaking ability with Beauden Barrett at number 10. He is going to be so crucial, and we saw his kicking and his patience last week against the Chiefs. That really paid off. And so it's looking like it could go either way, but I honestly do believe that as far as the prediction goes, the Crusaders are going to hang on to their record. It is an extremely decorated history they have in Christchurch in finals. I do think the Blues have enough to challenge them, and they clearly have the game plan to go extremely deep. But Crusaders and Chiefs are different gravy when it comes to finals time. Crusaders and a lot of the players in this team are used to winning. The Chiefs are not necessarily there. They've been used to being the bridesmaids for the last couple of years, last couple of finals. Crusaders in finals rugby are a ruthless bunch, and I just think that's going to be too much for the Blues to be able to overcome because unlike the Chiefs last week, the Crusaders are not going to be rattled, whereas I think that the Chiefs really did succumb to that. So I think the Blues have the game plan. I don't think they just haven't been quite impressive enough and haven't had all the polish they've needed to be able to do it again this week against the Crusaders. So Crusaders through to the final. And then the second semi-final, the one that will decide who I believe will meet the Crusaders in the grand final in Christchurch. I do believe that this is going to be the game of the weekend because the Brumbies have absolutely everything to prove, and so do the Chiefs. A lot of honor and respect is on the line here for themselves and for each other. It's been really interesting to watch how the Brumbies have grown into the season where the Chiefs have truly been awesome all throughout it. Then you look at where the Brumbies, and this is what all the analysis is about at the very end. When I go through about what the Brumbies looked like last time these two played in round 3 this year, compare them to now. So we look at the strengths and the weaknesses, how they would have changed, and then also what are going to be the small margins that the Brumbies or the Chiefs have to win, which are truly going to dictate the match and the outcome. So I think the first point that I'll make is that the Brumbies are a completely unchanged side from straight through to 23 from last week. They've gone with consistency. Now, the Chiefs have welcomed back 3 All Blacks. That's right. That's Quinn Tupaia at inside center, Luke Jacobson at number 7, and he is the captain. And I am, Wallace Atiti at number 8 from the bench. This gives their pack and their side a lot more dynamism. They have all those 3 are extremely powerful defenders, but most of all, extremely powerful attackers. And we know that Luke Jacobson is a great and terrible, I mean in a good way, terrible threat at the breakdown. So the Brumbies are going to have to be really prepared for that. Not that they didn't deal with one of the best pilferers in the competition, Duplessis Karifi, last week, but I do think that Luke Jacobson is a little bit of a bigger body, so to be able to shift him out of the way is going to have to be another big effort from the Brumbies forwards. Now, wet weather rugby is something Stephen Larkham has spoken about a lot throughout the year, and it is something that he was really poignant about when the Brumbies won up at Suncorp in wet conditions. I believe it was back in March. This was something that he mentioned because you want to be playing this towards the end of the season. It's something that he's been talking about for a lot of the season, where the Brumbies have needed to be focused and ready to play a game that can win in wet weather rugby. And as we see at the weekend, it's looking like that's what it's going to be. They have played direct all year. They have limited their errors. They have limited their penalties, and they have also attacked and played in the right parts of the field. And all those things they've been working on and growing into as the season's progressed. And that is what they're going to have to do again to an even higher level that they did last week against the Hurricanes at home at GI Stadium in Canberra. So a lot of people have been asking, or been talking about rather, are the Brumbies going to be able to play the game plan that they played last week, and is that going to be enough to be able to get rid of this Chiefs side and be able to progress to the final? And the answer to that is no. The Brumbies have to go up a couple of notches to truly be able to challenge this Chiefs side. The biggest difference between the Chiefs and the Hurricanes is that the Chiefs go direct a lot more. They pass a lot shorter, and they are a lot about overpowering you, where in the blunt force and in the close quarter action, whereas the Hurricanes have that in the game, but they're a lot more used to spreading it wide to their wingers like the Kinina Holos, Balin Sullivan, Finneganofos, the Punivais, the Proctors, and to be able to get outside you and get wide early to be able to get those mismatches, to then to be able to get the ball rolling and to be able to punish you that way. The Chiefs are all about going direct. They will go down the blind side on the Brumbies, and the Brumbies must be ready for that, because against the Hurricanes, which is something I mentioned last weekend, they kind of mitigated and minimized their rush in their defense to be able to account for the fact that these powerful ball runners can find gaps extremely easy when you give them a little bit of a mismatch, or you don't quite get the hit that you need on them because you're rushing up and making that hit. That was something they minimized last week. That is something they're going to have to bring back against the Chiefs, because the Chiefs are a system-based side, a lot more so than the Hurricanes are, who appear to play off the cuff. The Chiefs really are tough and gritty and well-drilled, and they are not going to be looking for these one-outs as much as the Hurricanes were, and that's why the rush needs to come back, because the last thing that you can afford to do, which I wrote about in my piece this week on Rugby Pass, you can go check that out if you prefer the written format, is that you can't give Damian McKenzie time on the ball. He is at number 10 this weekend, and that's why he looks so stellar at Super Rugby. There's more time to make decisions, more time to survey the opposition, and there's more time to be able to get in and around defenses. The Brumbies have to put pressure on them, and on all the playmakers actually, for the Chiefs. That's Ratama as well at the base, but you have to be able to put pressure on Damian McKenzie and put pressure on his skills, be pressure on his decision-making, because as we saw earlier when the Chiefs lost to the Waratahs targeted him accurately and effectively, and they let him know about it by putting on really good legal shots and well-timed shots. Now, I'm not saying that's the end-all or be-all of the game, but that is something they're going to have to bring back in their game, because they cannot wait for this Chiefs side to mill them into the ground, particularly in wet conditions. So when we go into the analysis, please pay attention to where the Brumbies suffered last time and how they suffered, but also look at how the Chiefs were able to get on top of the Brumbies, because the Chiefs will be looking to take the Brumbies to situations where they feel stressed, where the defenders have to make split second decisions to be able to cover up for a mistake that was made. Maybe a good carry by a Tupou, and then someone like a Daniel Rona or Quintapai comes around the corner and is able to get that mismatch in the defense. That is the thing that the Brumbies cannot afford to do. They have to make their first up one-time tackles, and then they have to reset, and they have to go back and apply pressure on the skills and on the decisions of the Chiefs players. The breakdown is going to be crucial, but I think that it's not as big as a fight as it was against the Hurricanes last week, because the Hurricanes have a particular tendency to attack the breakdown aggressively. The Brumbies were ready for that and they nullified it. The Chiefs, on the other hand, they are a lot more about disrupting the flow on your own ball. They're not necessarily going for a pilfer. They take out your cleaners, they take out your sealer. They're not necessarily going hard at the ball. They want to slow down the whole process around it, the engine and the machine around the ball. And that's what's going to be really important, because vice versa, the Chiefs love to pop and offload. They're not one of the sides that do it the most. They just be able to time it and select the opportunities to do it really well. And you aren't able to set a defense, you aren't able to put the pressure on if a ruck is never formed. So that means that the Chiefs will look for opportunities to not allow the Brumbies defense to set. And that comes from offloads, that comes from kicks, and on kicks, that is going to have to be something that Noah Loloseo and Ryan Lonergan go to regularly. If they're playing rugby between the 40s, they are going to get punished. They cannot afford to get a high phase count in wet conditions against such an aggressive and powerful and dominant in contact Chiefs side. They have to kick contestables. Corey Toole has been improvement out of sight this year with his high ball takes, and putting him and Andy Muirhead as well as Tom Wright in those situations to be able to come through and win high balls is going to be really, really important, because it is something that worked really well against the Blues in round 4 for the Brumbies, and that's what undid the Blues against the Brumbies, and that's what allowed them to break the Eden Park hoodoo. So contestable kicking is going to be key. Now, the Brumbies are one of the sides that have let me rephrase that. The Brumbies are the side that have the highest try scoring percentage off lineouts in the entire competition. They are elite at scoring, whether it is a maul or whether it is a maul setup to then a couple of phases to then score again. Their ability to manipulate space, which you'll see in the analysis, is elite. And it's not big cutout passes. It is small, tiny, little micro steps, little micro movements in and throughout several phases. And then they finally pull the trigger and able to score a try, whether it's James Slippo and Alan Toa at the props through the front, or whether it is a back out wide that they've been able to manipulate that space with just a couple of short passes. I will show you all of that and more in the analysis, but that is going to be crucial. Being able to win the battle in the center of the park, to be able to launch into a kick for penalty into the 22, or whether even if it's just an attempted 50-22 and it gets down there, it's a Chiefs ball. Allowing Nick Frost, allowing Tom Hooper to be able to get up and contest the ball with the Chiefs in their own 22 is going to be a crucial part of frustrating the Chiefs and keeping them nailed down into their own half, because we know that the Brumbies lineout is one of the best in the competition. It is, in fact, the best at 89%, and the Chiefs are somewhere down at 8th in 84%. So it is an elite part of their game. Likewise, the breakdown, they secure more turnovers, the Brumbies do. The Chiefs concede less, and the Brumbies concede a lot more, but that is against opposition who have known pilferers. And apart from Jacobson, this is not a side that is actually going to go hard at the breakdown. The final point that I'll make before we go into the analysis is that the Brumbies will not be able to rely on the scrum as a get-out-of-jail-free card this week like it was against the Hurricanes last week. That's because Samisoni Takiyoho and then the two props, I believe it's Dyer and Norris for the Chiefs, have been scrummaging a lot better. So they have the third best scrum success rate, and the Brumbies have the first. Nevertheless, Xavier Numia and Patafilo, as well as Tossi last week, were really taken to town by Alan Alatoa, James Slipper, and also Billy Pollard. That is not going to be the case against the Chiefs this weekend, but they have to at least give it a hot crack and make that their own. The Brumbies really have to go hard and try to create another spot for the Brumbies to be able to go from set piece to set piece. They do not want to be playing big phases. They can play big phases once they get in the 22, because as Stephen Larkham mentioned this week, they are the side who scored the most tries after 10 phases. And that is a real testament to their systems, their grit, and also their physicality and determination when they're in those situations. But that also means playing in the right parts of the field. And so the Brumbies cannot get caught up in the likes of Damien McKenzie, Sean Stevenson, Emoni Narawa, Quinn Tapia. Do not get overawed by these guys and want to play like them. That means Tom Wright has to nail his kicks. He has to nail when he comes into the line, and Noel Laseo and Ryan Lonergan need to see the opportunities to play deep as well. But they cannot kink deep and give these players an ability to run the ball back. They have to make them either contestable, or they have to be able to go to the line and just compete for the line out. Their numbers in the scrum, in the line out, are too good to ignore that sort of foundation that they can build if they get there, if they are on song on the night. So without further ado, I'll give you the prediction right now. I do believe that the Brumbies can and will win in in Hamilton. It feels kind of weird to say this, and it breaks all kind of records or history. It's going against history. It's breaking a hoodoo, but that's the kind of mood that the Brumbies are in, and I do believe that with this squad, with the consistency that they've selected, they can absolutely do it. The Chiefs have, I wrote this in the article, man for man, probably more firepower and more attacking threats, more lethal weapons in their side. But nonetheless, I do think that the Brumbies have worked their way to build into a final setup, and I do think that the Brumbies will get it done. So now we'll go into the analysis, keep everything that I've said in mind about where they're playing the game, what they need to be able to do when they've got the ball, and also where they can afford to push and pull in terms of momentum and where they need to create those momentum moments. So we're heading to the analysis right now. We're going to need to take into the game at the weekend. This next clip that we're going to look at also, first of all, highlights the defensive frailties of the Brumbies earlier in the season. Len Ikitau has gone straight into a drift and hold defense, whereas Ollie Sapsford at number 12 has gone straight up and attacked the space and attacked the man. Now, had they been connected, this space would have been cut off, but they look like a chess or a checkers board, and they are all zigzagged across the line. This is terrible for a defensive shape, and no wonder Quinn Tapia is able to slice through, and the Chief gets caught with his back turned to Quinn Tapia. Len Ikitau hasn't fully committed to him there either, and then he's just able to slice through with superb skill, but again, caught tight, having to tackle a player that Luke Ryan has already taken care of. Len Ikitau is again caught on the hop, and so is Corey Toole in the pink boots outside of him. Gideon Ramp. I hope you guys enjoyed that a lot, as much as I did making it. It's an absolute blast to be able to share this sort of rugby insights with you guys. Follow along for more. I just want to thank all you guys for an X. You've been following me. Follow me there. I've reached over 400 followers on there, as well as on YouTube. I've gone over the 300 mark. It was only 250 a week ago, but I want that to keep growing. So please, guys, if you get any value of this channel, if you're ready for more content on the All Blacks, Springboks, Argentina, TRC, but of course the British and Irish Lions tour that's coming up in just a few weeks, in just a couple of weeks actually, in 2 weeks, then please follow and subscribe, hit the notification button so you know when the content goes live, and I hope to see a lot more of you guys on here soon. But until then, enjoy the semi-finals, wrap and review Wallaby squad prediction coming at you this weekend as well. So until then, enjoy your footy. Bye for now.